Hello and welcome to Guidance Review. I'm David Pudwill, and today we're going to be talking about FDA's guidance document about requesting FDA feedback on combination products. A couple key takeaways for today's video are one, some background on combination products and how FDA regulates them. Two, feedback mechanisms available for combination products. And three, when to use combination product agreement meetings, or CPAMs. So without much further ado, let's go ahead and get into the video. Here we have FDA's recent guidance document from December 2020. We can download the final guidance here. We can read the Federal Register notice and scroll down and go check out the docket. We can see here that this guidance is applicable to CBER, CDER, and CDRH. And we can also submit comments here. So if we go ahead and go to regulations.gov, which is one of those links that we just saw, we can check out the 2019 draft guidance that was published. We can also see a couple other attachments here, and we can see the comments. If we go ahead and open up comments, we'll see there are 13 results. Again, here at the top, we have a comment from the AdvaMed Medical Technology Association. Also of note, we have a number of comments here, but a comment from Regeneron Pharmaceuticals that I'll highlight as well. So if we take a look at the AdvaMed comment, there are just a couple requests. These are actually, I think reasonable to highlight in terms of kits. And AdvaMed had asked for some clarifications around convenience kit combination products. Now, this information wasn't actually included. Neither was this footnote about non-PMOA device constituent part makers obtaining feedback about their constituent parts. For example, performance data available in a master file. These are useful, I think, to highlight, though, just for your edification. And then we have a comment from Regeneron. Now, this detail, consider adding to Section 4 feedback mechanisms available for combination products, combination product agreement meetings, a discussion of the types of scenarios where a CPAM would be the appropriate type of meeting and the types of questions that would be in scope, as well as some illustrative examples to clarify these scenarios. This actually was included from the draft to the updated guidance. There may have been some other requesters with similar kinds of requests, but I would highlight that this specific comment made by Regeneron was addressed by FDA in the final guidance. So do submit your comments. Occasionally, they do actually change what it is that FDA puts out in their final guidance. So if we go ahead and jump into the guidance document itself, we'll see here some high-level details, address, telephone, just all the boilerplate information that we generally have here. As we scroll down again, we can see that this is relevant to OCP, CBER, CDER, and CDRH, and that this was published in December of 2020. Then we get into a table of contents, and then we get into an introduction. The purpose of this guidance is to discuss ways in which combination product sponsors can obtain feedback from FDA on scientific and regulatory questions, and to describe best practices for FDA and sponsors when interacting on these topics. These interactions can occur through application-based mechanisms, such as the pre-submission process used in the Center for Devices and Radiological Health, and the Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research, and the formal meetings used in the Center for Drug Evaluation and Research, and CBER, or through combination product agreement meetings, CPAMs, as appropriate. FDA is issuing this guidance consistent with the agency's ongoing commitment to enhancing clarity and transparency regarding regulatory considerations for combination products, and in accordance with the mandate under this section of the FD&C Act, which was added by Section 3038 of the Cures Act. And this should address the structured process for managing pre-submission interactions with sponsors developing combination products, and best practices to ensure FDA feedback in such pre-submission interactions represents FDA's best advice based on the information provided during these pre-submission interactions. And 3, how CPAMs relate to other FDA meeting types, what information should be submitted with a request for a CPAM, and the form and content of agreements reached through a CPAM. And then there's a little bit of background here that we'll highlight in terms of what combination products are and how FDA regulates them. A combination product is a product comprised of any combination of a drug, device, and/or biological product. The drugs, devices, and biological products included in combination products are referred to as constituent parts of the combination product. A combination product is assigned to an agency center that will have primary jurisdiction, that would be the lead center, for that combination product's pre-market review and regulation. Under Section 503G1 of the FD&C Act, assignment of a combination product to a lead center is based on a determination of which constituent part provides the primary mode of action, or PMOA, of the combination product. The lead center for pre-market review of the combination product also has the lead for post-market regulation. Regardless of the PMOA, agency components coordinate as appropriate to ensure efficient, effective regulation of combination product. And then here we have a question about whom should I contact for preliminary or general questions. And this is going to be the Office of Combination Products. And you can submit an RFD or a pre-RFD. There are guidance documents and some detail on FDA's website on all of that. If you know the lead center for your combination product, for instance, there's a pending submission, then contact the FDA point of contact, or this is POC in the remainder of this guidance. Or if you do not yet have an FDA point of contact, or POC, contact the lead center product jurisdiction officer. So that's your PJO. In some circumstances, combination products may not require pre-market authorization, such as some kits, and in those cases, you should contact the lead center product jurisdiction officer. If you're unsure of the lead center, if you have general questions regarding intercenter collaboration on combination products, combination product regulation, combination product guidance or policy, or if you need help in navigating the combination product review process at FDA, contact OCP at this email address. And then FDA outlines some best practices regarding interactions between FDA and sponsors of combination products, appropriate submission and processing, a timely use of appropriate communication procedures, and clear, robust information sharing. You can spend some time looking at this if you're actually going to be going through making a submission. And sponsor best practices. Submissions for a combination product should be submitted to the appropriate lead center. Further detail here. Clear and appropriate questions should be included. Comprehensive rationale and supporting information. And communications through the identified FDA point of contact. And then in terms of FDA best practices, FDA should notify the sponsor of the FDA point of contact, or POC. FDA should engage relevant experience. And FDA should provide consolidated, aligned, and reliable feedback. And then there are several feedback mechanisms available for combination products. There are application-based mechanisms that are available to drugs, devices, and biological products. These mechanisms are typically the most efficient and effective way for communication with FDA and are based on the application type that would be submitted for the combination product. This section provides considerations for application-based mechanisms when used to address combination product issues. Sponsors should also review associated guidance relevant to the specific application-based mechanism. All interactions with FDA should be coordinated through the lead center for the combination product and using the application-based mechanisms of that center, regardless of the feedback being requested. For example, if a sponsor has general questions on the drug constituent part of a device-led combination product, that interaction would occur through CDRH, and the appropriate application-based mechanism would be the pre-submission meeting process. And for application-based mechanisms, FDA processing and FDA feedback to the combination product sponsor should be provided consistent with the existing process outlined for the type of interaction, and this is outlined in the appendices. Here, FDA has highlighted the information to include when requesting feedback on a combination product through an application-based mechanism. FDA wants to see a device description, a design diagram or other image, identification of components that are part of the device, and if the combination product contains a device constituent part that is a cleared or approved device that the sponsor seeks to cross-reference, identify the application or submission number for the previously cleared or approved device. For a device-led combination product, information identifying and describing the drug and/or biological product, constituent parts, including as applicable, chemical name, established or proper name and structure, the route of administration and/or dosing information for the drug and/or biological product, constituent parts, and if the combination product contains an active ingredient that is included in an approved drug product that the sponsor seeks to cross-reference or rely upon in its submission, the application number of the approved product. In terms of combination product agreement meetings, these are intended as a means in addition to the application-based mechanisms for sponsors to obtain clarity and certainty and are available for combination products for which the lead center assignment is clear. The purpose of a CPAM is to address the standards and requirements for marketing authorization of a combination product and other issues relevant to a combination product, such as requirements related to post-market modification of the product or CGMPs. In response to a written CPAM request, FDA must meet with the sponsor within 75 calendar days, document any agreements made in writing, and make them part of the administrative record. And here FDA refers to a section of the FD&C Act, and any agreement under Section 503G2A shall remain in effect unless deviation from it is agreed upon in writing by the FDA and sponsor, or pursuant to a decision by certain individuals specified in the statute as appropriate, that an issue has been identified since the agreement was reached that is essential to determining whether the standard for marketing has been met, or it is otherwise justifiable to deviate from the agreement based on scientific evidence for public health reasons. As noted above, the agency encourages the use of application-based mechanisms as they generally offer the most efficient and effective means to obtain feedback. And here, FDA identifies information to include when requesting feedback on a combination product through a CPAM. Product information should be included, such as the product name, description of the overall combination product and constituent parts, indications for use statement, and as applicable, route of administration and dosing information. Product information should also include, as relevant, the same information referenced above for constituent parts, and must identify their product as a combination product. Background: sponsors should describe the status of product development, summarize previous interactions, identify RFDs or pre-RFDs, and identify the proposed regulatory pathway if not already established. Sponsors should include the requested form of communication, that would be face-to-face or teleconference or a written response. Also include agreement proposals. So this would be the items that the sponsor is looking for FDA agreement on. And rationale and data supporting the proposals should be provided and organized by topic when appropriate. And the sponsor should include a list of planned participants from the sponsor's organization, including names and titles, and affiliations of consultants and interpreters should also be included. If this information changes, it should be updated no later than 5 business days prior to the meeting. And just note that all non-U.S. citizens attending a meeting in an FDA facility are subject to additional security screening, so you want to get that information in particular into FDA no less than 2 weeks prior to the meeting. In terms of submitting a CPAM request, this should be submitted to the lead center for the combination product using the processes described in Table 1 below. Identify the submission as a combination product agreement meeting request, identify the type of engagement being requested, and provide the complete information described above so that FDA can assess whether a CPAM is the most efficient mechanism for interaction, coordinate between centers, and ensure that FDA has sufficient information to evaluate the agreement proposals or specific items thereof. FDA encourages sponsors, where possible, to consolidate related issues for the combination product that are ready for consideration into a single CPAM request, as opposed to submitting multiple CPAM requests. FDA discourages submitting multiple CPAM requests for related issues because the agency would likely not be able to reach agreement on the sponsor's proposals independently. FDA also discourages submission of CPAM requests if there is an application for the combination product under active FDA review. Application-based mechanisms should be used as appropriate at that stage. Sponsors should follow the submission process described in Table 1 to ensure appropriate receipt and routing of the CPAM request. And here we have Table 1. Here's the detail on the lead center. the combination product application type, and the CPAM request process. This is quite a useful table, actually, I would say. And this identifies how you would go about submitting the request in each of these instances. And then in terms of an FDA response to a CPAM, the following outlines the steps for the CPAM process. First would be acceptance of the CPAM request, and these will generally be granted unless the request is not for a combination product or the PMOA, primary mode of action, for the combination product has not been determined. FDA notes that it is not appropriate, however, to use CPAMs to resolve disputes that would otherwise be reviewed under the lead center's dispute resolution and/or appeals process. See below. FDA also note that if a sponsor does not include sufficient information in its request to allow for meaningful discussion or feedback, the agency would likely not be able to reach agreement on the sponsor's proposal. FDA intends to contact the sponsor within 21 calendar days of receiving a CPAM request, confirming receipt and providing a meeting time, or providing a substantive basis for not granting the CPAM. In terms of CPAM interaction, sponsors may choose to submit a request for a face-to-face meeting, a teleconference, or written feedback. If the sponsor submits a request for a face-to-face meeting or teleconference and FDA accepts the request, FDA will schedule the meeting to occur within 75 calendar days of receiving the CPAM request. Meetings are typically 1 hour in duration, and FDA may contact the sponsor if FDA believes written feedback only would be appropriate. FDA also intends to provide preliminary response to the sponsor prior to a face-to-face meeting or teleconference, and after receiving such a response, the sponsor should notify the FDA no later than 3 calendar days following a receipt about whether a face-to-face meeting or teleconference is not needed, or identifying the issues which the sponsor wants to further discuss at the meeting or teleconference. And then preliminary responses, written feedback, and CPAM agreements. If the sponsor requests written feedback only, FDA intends to provide final written feedback for the sponsor within 75 calendar days of receipt of the request. If the sponsor requests a face-to-face meeting or teleconference, FDA intends to provide the sponsor preliminary responses to the CPAM request no later than 5 calendar days before the meeting or teleconference. And if the sponsor then determines that a meeting or teleconference is not needed, or is needed to discuss only certain issues, FDA's preliminary response will represent the agency's final written feedback on a CPAM. If the meeting or teleconference is held, FDA intends to provide final written feedback within 30 calendar days following the meeting. FDA's final written feedback should include the agreed upon proposals and indicate for each proposal or item thereof for which the sponsor sought FDA agreement that either FDA agrees with the proposal or item, FDA does not agree with the sponsor's proposal or item, and why FDA does not consider the sponsor's proposal or item acceptable, or that FDA cannot agree to the proposal or item at the time of the response due to inadequate or insufficient information. And such a response would include a summary of the additional scientific data or other information needed to support further review of the sponsor's proposal or items. If a sponsor wants to submit information to respond to identified inadequacies or insufficiencies, the sponsor can do so by using an application-based mechanism or submitting a new CPAM request. If sponsors would like clarification regarding FDA's response to a CPAM request, including whether a CPAM or another mechanism would be appropriate for future interaction, they should promptly contact the FDA point of contact. And here, in terms of validity of agreements made through CPAM, any agreement made through the CPAM process shall remain in effect except in limited circumstances set forth as discussed above. New information or updated scientific thinking, for example, included as reflected in subsequently issued guidance, may result in FDA identifying an issue that is essential to determining whether the standard for marketing authorization has been met. In addition, the formal agreement is product specific and is predicated on the sponsor not changing the basis of the agreement, such as failing to follow an agreed upon preclinical or clinical protocol, making substantive changes to an endpoint, altering the proposed intended use or indications, or product design or contents, changing the manufacturing process or controls, or changing the investigational plan. CPAM agreements that are not subsequently followed by the sponsor are no longer valid, though FDA may consider data or information generated as it deems appropriate for pre-market review or post-market regulation as applicable. And when FDA determines that a CPAM agreement is no longer in effect, entirely or in part, FDA intends to notify the sponsor in writing of which portions of the agreement are no longer in effect and the basis for the decision. And then here's some detail on the use of application-based mechanisms, CPAMs, and dispute resolution, consistent with FDA's past practices. FDA intends to continue to provide as reliable and definitive feedback as possible based on the information provided. The agency encourages combination product sponsors to interact through application-based mechanisms to provide FDA an opportunity to evaluate technical data or engage in scientific discussion before considering a CPAM. Issues appropriate for application-based mechanisms are requesting feedback on scientific issues, study design, testing approaches, or application preparation considerations for combination products or clarifying topics for which FDA has already published technical guidance. If sponsors have questions on which application-based mechanism is appropriate, they should contact the lead center point of contact if known, or the lead center product jurisdiction officer, if the sponsor has not previously interacted with FDA on the combination product. And issues appropriate for the CPAM process. CPAMs may be appropriate for seeking agreement from FDA on an approach if previous feedback under an application-based mechanism has not provided sufficient certainty. CPAM should not be used to resolve disputes that would otherwise be addressed under the lead center's dispute resolution or appeals process. And because the goal of CPAMs is agreement on a sponsor's proposals, more information and data may be needed in a CPAM request as compared to an application-based mechanism submission. Issues appropriate for dispute resolution or appeal. Disagreement or disputes over constituent part or combination product issues identified as part of an FDA action, such as a hold. For example, if a combination product sponsor received a complete response letter related to a constituent part issue that it believes had been adequately addressed in the application, the sponsor could appeal the CR action following the appropriate process for doing so. Then we get into the appendices. Here are some examples of application-based mechanisms available. This is also a very useful table. Here we see for PMAs, 510Ks, de novos, HDEs, and IDEs, the types of issues and the application-based mechanism available. These are going to be different types of pre-submission or Q-submission or submission issue requests. And then here in Appendix 2, we see the same kind of detail for INDs, NDAs, and BLAs, and we see the examples of the types of issues and the type of meetings. Could be a type A, B, or C meeting, a special protocol assessment, a designation submission, an RMAT designation, or a biosimilar initial advisory, depending on the examples of the types of issues that you're looking to resolve. And then FDA also includes here some details for 351K BLAs and the application-based mechanisms available, and as well as for ANDAs, and again, the mechanisms available based on the type of issue that you're dealing with. And here for prior to a pre-IND, there are application-based mechanisms such as an interact meeting or emerging technology program meetings for innovative investigational products. And that wraps it up for today's guidance. I'm going to go ahead and just recap on a couple key takeaways from today's video. One, hopefully you've taken away some background on combination products and how FDA regulates them. Hopefully you also now have a better understanding of feedback mechanisms available for combination products, and also when to use combination product agreement meetings, or CPAMs. Thank you very much for staying with me to the end of the video, if you have, and really look forward to any feedback you might be able to provide, any questions or comments. We rely on them in terms of creating new content, and please like, subscribe, and look forward to catching you in the next video. Thanks. Have a wonderful day. Bye.